So the first scenario that I want to throw out to you, or the first question I want to throw out to you this morning is lying wrong? And before you answer that, I'm going to tell you two examples that I can think of where I might argue that lying is not wrong. One is a really easy one. How many of you have little kids or have had children? Y'all tell them there was Santa Claus? Did y'all perpetuate that? And that's a lie, right? There's not a man coming down the chimney and leaving presents and eating your cookies and drinking your milk. But we tell that. So that's one I can think of. The second one is, how many gentlemen in here do we have that are married? Any married men in here? Mr. Espinosa, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but when your wife or girlfriend asks you, does my ass look fat in these jeans? We're going to lie about that? We might. We might lie to keep the peace, right? So those are, I'm being funny on those two, but who has a good response? I'm throwing that out. Is lying wrong? What do you think, Mr. Mitchell? I ask you, is lying wrong? What do you tell me back?
I believe in the context of what you're trying to
All right, so
the scenario of what you were.
So in other words, it depends. It depends. All right, what does it depend on? What does it depend on, Ms. Jordan?
How serious it is. Like, it's like a little white lie, like when you wash your dishes, okay, whatever, you lie. If it's something major, like, you steal or something, you say no, yeah, lying is wrong, okay?
Okay. I'm going to repeat some of y'all's answers just for the video for the my online class listening. So we got, first of all, it depends. What does it depend on? The first that Ms. Jordan made a good point. How serious an issue is it? Are we talking about a little white lie, or are we talking about a lie that would, that could hurt someone or that would impact other people? Who's my victim in the lie, right? What else could it depend on? Mr. Williams, what else could it depend on? What else could it depend on?
I'm trying.
So the first question was, is lying wrong? And we answered that by saying it depends. So what does it depend on? Intent. What are you trying to do?
Right.
That's a good answer. Are we trying to mislead somebody? Are we trying to harm somebody? Are we trying to make our wife feel better about the way she looks in those jeans? So intent, yeah. We could think of some scenarios where we might lie to protect somebody, right? And again, I'm not saying that makes it right, but if we start out with the premise that it depends, then that throws us into a whole gray area, right? Then we're talking about circumstances, intent, seriousness, all these things.
It also depends on what kind of lie it is.
What kind of lie it is? Tell me more about that.
Well, you differentiate between little white lies, but then there's lies we tell, for instance, about Santa Claus. We don't consider those wrong.
Right.
Those people. But I do know people who won't tell the kids that Santa Claus exists because they consider it wrong to lie to them.
So even on something like Santa Claus, Mr. Williams makes the point, that's not universal that we think that's an okay lie. There might be some people that still think that that's not a good lie. So for the Daniels twins' benefit and Mr. Barnes' benefit, we're talking about is lying wrong. And we talked about that there are situations where maybe not universally, but we all approve of lies in a situation like Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. We've all done that. We feel like that's harmless. But that really, if we're going to answer the question, is lying wrong, the answer is it depends, and it depends on a number of factors. Mr. Williams makes a good point, though, too, that there are people who would say lying is wrong, period. It doesn't matter the seriousness. It doesn't matter the context. It doesn't matter the intent. So in other words, you might get a valid answer from somebody that says, no, it doesn't depend on anything. We say it depends, and you might get an opinion that says it doesn't depend. It's just wrong. I would be hard pressed to think of anybody would truly stand up and say, I have never lied. I have never misled anyone. I mean, you're not children anymore, but as children, that's one of the first things we learn is truthfulness and honesty, and how we deal with those situations, and we learn from the consequences that come from those things. One of the ways that children learn. So that's the beginning, starting off point today, is that you can see that is something that we could probably debate for the rest of the class period, is lying wrong. So with that kind of as a warm-up, let's go to the second scenario, or the second question. Can anybody not see what's on the board? You guys read it okay over here? All right.
I forgot my glasses.
Okay. I'm going to read it out loud, but if you, at any point during the discussion, feel like you want to move down closer, feel free. But there's nothing about this that you will have to be able to read this for. If you're watching online, these are going to be posted to the content module, so you'll be able to pull this up and follow along as we go. All right, first scenario, you represent an investment company. Your company is selling stock in a company that you believe is overvalued. You would never buy it. However, you're told that there is a special push on to sell this particular stock. In fact, your company is offering trips to Hawaii for agents who sell specified amounts of stock. You make sales presentations to prospects that include you saying, this is one of the finest investments of its type on the market. I recommend that you sign up today. So my first question to you is, Mr. Stevens, I'll ask you, is anything in this scenario a lie, in your opinion?
I think it depends again, but because like on the company side, they might believe that their stock is good, or they honestly might not, and they're still trying to push it and make sales. And also on the other side of it, the salesperson doesn't believe that it's a good, like what he's saying, he also believes it's a lie. So I think there's two sides of the coin. Like he personally might believe that it's a lie, but also on the other side, he's representing the company that believes that might be the truth.
Right, that's good. Good analysis of that. Yes, sir, Mr. Thomas.
The way I see it, since it's like both of it's really opinionated and there's no hard fact, I don't consider it a lie, but I do consider it a little dishonest, especially because if you don't, and I mean, you can't go out your way and express that, oh, well, personally, I feel this way, but the way I see it is that I feel like it's wrong to promote it when you personally don't feel that way about the product.
All right, so interesting perspective. What Mr. Thomas points out is how much of that statement might just be an opinion. How do we differentiate opinions from facts? Does that make a difference in whether or not we consider something a lie or wrong? In the context of sales, there is, wouldn't you agree that there's a certain amount of salesmanship that we expect from a salesman or salesperson, right? I mean, if I go in to a car dealership, I'm already going in expecting to get the business a little bit, right? So I might be going in automatically thinking defensively, all right, I know I can't believe everything that this person is saying. I'm expecting to get a little bit of a sales job here. I think they call that in the industry puffery. You see it in advertising. How much of advertising you know, do we expect a certain amount of marketing and push and promotion and advertising? We probably do. What's the responsibility of the consumer? Do we put any responsibility on the customer of Mr. Stevens and Mr. Thomas in this scenario?
What type of responsibility?
Who said that?
Like,
Mr. Fields. What type of responsibility? All right, tell me where you're headed with that. Because why?
Well, I was asking because like, what would like the customer have to like do with selling, you know?
Well, do we put any responsibility on the customer to decide whether or not what they're being told is true or not?
Yeah.
So, all right, I see it. Let me go in order. This is what we're talking about here. Go on, Ms. Harrell.
I would do your research before you buy anything.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to do your research.
I mean, if you're gonna spend money on something, I mean, I would want to know everything about it.
If you're going to spend money on something like a stock or an important purchase, not an impulse purchase, so in your eyes, we do put some responsibility on the consumer.
Like, I have an option to buy stock in my company, but I can also see like the last 10 years of that it goes up and down the entire time. So I'm given stock working there, but would I personally buy my own? Probably not.
Interesting perspective. She gets stock where she works, but would she buy it herself from the insider's perspective?
I mean, well, I work at Publix,
Mhm.
so it's an employee-owned business. So over the last years, it's split. I mean, so people that have been there like 25 years, they have a lot of stock. But since I've been there, like it's gone up and down the whole time. Now since COVID started, it's gone way up. But I'm also a firm believer that it's gonna crash.
Right. Well, the nature of stocks is that they fluctuate, right? And we know that. Ms. Daniels had a big reaction. You're gonna say what she said, that you do feel like the consumer has some responsibility.
Yeah, because that's what any product, any stock, anything that you know, put your value or your time or your money into. Like, you can't just expect that a stock company gonna tell you, oh, this is BS, I don't want this, or you get what I'm saying? You shouldn't.
So you're saying you'd be worried if the salesman wasn't telling you it was a good investment. I mean, you expect them to tell you it's a good
I
investment.
mean, they have a job to do, so you can't expect them to just, oh, this is not a good investment, because you gotta understand that they still have to make their standards, they still have to make, you know, so they have a job to do. He's not doing anything to probably get his family that trip to Hawaii.
So everybody, so in other words, what I'm hearing is there's a job to do for everybody in this situation. Interesting.
I'm gonna look at buying differently from buying stock and like buying history church. It's different for me, you know what I mean? But some people, not everyone even like goes to like the investment company or like a broker. They do their own research, but some people just let the like give their money to people and let them do them. You know what I mean? However it turns out. Most people, you'd be surprised at how many people lose their money in stocks because they just don't do research.
Well, and so that's another it depends answer, right? Whether we're buying dishwasher detergent or a stock, it depends. Depends on how big or how important the purchase is. The more important the purchase, the more responsibility we have, we place on the consumer. Let me get Mr. Corcoran, then I'm gonna add a twist.
In this case, well, most investment companies, if you represent it, I'm pretty sure you have to go through several qualifications, and in those qualifications, you're taught pretty much this morally what is safe, and your whole obligation is to keep your customers
As a
safe
salesman, you mean? So his point is,
financially.
okay. When I restate y'all's points, if I restate them wrong, y'all speak up. I'm doing it mostly for the benefit of the online, but so I think your point is that we know that there are certain trainings and certain expectations out of certain types of salesmen, financial, and that they have their own maybe codes of ethics or training or duties that they're supposed to do. Do you feel like that protects a consumer in these situations?
I feel like basically what I'm saying is, I feel like as the consumer, you should do more research on the actual company instead of what they're taking.
So you put more responsibility on the consumer in that situation.
I would put not the, if you pick the company, you should go with whatever they decide to, sell you, but you should pick what company you're gonna let sell you.
I see. Okay. The point is, you want to pick a company to deal with. You want to do it. You want to do your research and due diligence on the sales group, not the company of whose stock you're buying. The people you're dealing with. That's a good point. That's a good point. If these are people that have good name, have good reputation, that you've dealt with them before, that you look at them and you say they have a lot of experience, that makes you feel better. So that's another form of responsibility we're putting on the consumer. Mr. Lester.
I personally don't think what the company's asking him to do is wrong. I think on the salesman side, you have to take your opinions and feelings out of it. Like, for example, I used to work at State Farm. Everybody knows State Farm is generally more expensive than the rest of the car insurance. But even still, like, if I know I do a quote with somebody and it's $300 a month for one car, I know that's expensive. But I know as a salesman, it's my job to present it as if this is the best thing on the market. You have to take your feelings out of it. And I think if you allow your feelings, your like opinions to get into the way of your own sale, you kind of lose that wolf mentality that most salesmen have. You really could be shooting yourself in the foot.
So you have a job to do as an employee to sell your company's product at the price. I mean, your company sets the price, you sell it. If they can get cheaper insurance somewhere else, they needed to have done that research. It's not your responsibility to say this isn't the best deal you can get anywhere. Where do we draw the line on that, Mr. Pachame?
Well, kind of going into what you said, a lot of customers also appreciate more honesty. So if you give your opinion on what you don't think is the best option, they'll probably appreciate that more than if you let them and you find out the hard way.
That's a good point. Do we feel reassured when a salesman we think is being a little more honest with us? You know, Miss Kelly, no, you're not buying that.
It depends on what they're trying to say.
Depends on what they're trying to sell.
Yeah, if it's like clothes or something, and you're like, this is not a good idea, maybe this is better.
Mhm.
Like, okay, thank you for being honest. And
Okay.
they're like, you look so great in that, and I look horrible in it, like, no. But a stock, like, if someone was like, well, buy it, I'll say no. Like,
So, okay, Miss Jordan.
I mean, I think you should do like some honesty right in line too, 'cause like, I kind of do that at work too. Like, I'm gonna give you like the opinion on like if I think it's not a good product, I'm gonna tell you like, yeah, it's not a good product, but that's just based off of my opinion. You know, I think you should still try it or whatever. And I like to still get it.
Well, and so that's another good point too. Who's to say whether this isn't, do we really know whether this stock is a good buy or not? I mean, we might have training, we might have good track record predicting the stock market, we might be good analysts of these things, but I mean, nobody can guarantee, right? I mean, so that depends too. Ms. Harrell.
I think at the end of the day, we all just have a job to do. Like, if we don't sell, the company's no longer there, then we're out of a job ourselves. It doesn't matter, like, you can be a good person, but at the end of the day, you take care of yourself too.
All right, that's a good point. Ms. Reynolds?
So, just from personal experience, like working in retail, we would have to like try to sell credit cards, and I would literally get in trouble if I didn't do it. And they would want me to ask like 3 times, and it was so annoying. It was like an internal battle because I knew I was being annoying and I didn't want to ask that.
Yes.
So I feel like it's kind of similar, but I feel like the company should take a little more responsibility to just like put up a poster or something for people who are interested, so then it doesn't fall as much on the employee. And then that way, you know, it like applies and advertises more to people who are already familiar like with the subject. And then if they want to offer incentives to like employees to sell more, that's fine. And then it can be like more of a personal decision instead of people getting punished for not doing it.
Right, all good points. So if we have a job to do and we have a duty to our employer to do our job, if we're in a sales position, our job is to sell the product. And if we expect some responsibility from a consumer to do their homework or to be discerning about what we're saying, where do we draw the line? What is the line between doing your job and going too far?
When you begin to harm another person,
So he says whenever you begin to harm the other person.
if you know some bad stuff, and you sell them the stuff, and you tell them some good stuff, just so you can make money, that's when it's like that. But if it's actually pretty good stuff, and you're trying to sell it to them, then it makes sense.
But in this case, our salesman did not believe what he was saying. Your point is a good one. I'm just saying in this case, you're the salesman in this scenario would never buy this stock, and he believes it's overvalued. Mr. Lester.
Yeah, I think, you do have to take your feelings out of it. I think from a sales perspective, I think it's doing more harm than good once you start to kind of like pressure somebody to buy something. And I think that's like the stereotype around a car salesman is if you go to buy a used car or whatever, they're gonna, put all this pressure on you to buy it and stuff like that. And then I think that's when you kind of cross the line versus just trying to do your job instead.
So we draw the line at harming someone. We draw the line at pressuring someone. Yes, ma'am.
And also, just like I watched the show, like insider trading, like a person that really know that company, like you work with this company, so if you telling somebody that, okay, if you put this amount on here, it might shoot up, you can get in trouble for that, like, that's harming your job at the end of the day, so it's very minimal that you can say when you're trying to sell something to somebody. I mean, that's anything that you do.
So there are limits to what a salesperson could legally say, and you might not be getting the whole story from a salesperson. When we all expect that to some degree, right? I mean, I guess I'll weigh in here. I think that I agree with everybody who said we draw the line at harm to somebody, pressuring somebody, saying, representing something as fact that we know is not true, not just an opinion, but telling somebody something about a product that we know is not true, a real lie, listen to me, a false statement about that. Those are places where we might have more consensus that we draw the line there. One more question before we move on, or a couple more questions before we move on. One, how much less responsibility do we place on a consumer if the salesperson or the company has a high degree of specialization or knowledge about a product? And I'm thinking about if I was going to buy some high-tech machine for my company that I know I need the machine, but it's not part of my expertise. I have no idea how these things work. I really have to rely on a salesman in that situation. I can do some homework, but there's only so much homework I can do about how the inner workings of a computer. I mean, so in those situations, anybody disagree with this? We do rely more on the company or the salespeople if it's an area where we just can't obtain any expertise. That's somewhat scary to me, because you have to have a certain amount of faith, I guess, in that. And back to Mr. Corcoran's point, you would really want to be comfortable with the company that's selling you something, if you're going to take a leap of faith on something that you really can't do enough due diligence on.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I think you can do like general research. I know there's a product I'm looking for that I don't know nothing about. I just put it in Google, and sometimes I just type in like top brands, or just kind of see what comes up the most, and then I kind of let you gauge, like, this is like the most trusted company, and just kind of go from there.
You guys are smart consumers, which I like to hear. But there's another problem in this scenario that we haven't touched on yet. It's a common problem in ethics. It's called conflict of interest. What's the conflict of interest? Mr. Singer, do you see any conflict of interest in this scenario?
I don't for the salesman, I don't really see, unless he cares that much about who he's selling to, I don't think there's a conflict of interest. I mean, technically speaking, it's probably not a good thing to be lying to someone based off your opinion, but,
Well, what about with respect to the sales incentive? Do you see a conflict of interest with the sales award, the trip to Hawaii?
maybe, I think it's odd that if the company, Mr. Stevens was talking about the company maybe being pretty proud of their stock and actually thinking it was the right value. I think it would be odd if it was the right value, and then they would also incentivize it with extra things, as if, it just seems like they probably understand that it's overvalued.
It's so interesting perspective. Maybe, which I think is in the law, you're doing well when your first answer to me is maybe or it depends, then I like the way you're thinking, because you're realizing that none of this is black and white. Let's just talk about sales incentives in general. Isn't there some degree of conflict of interest in selling things when you're going to personally benefit in ways other than just your regular compensation? But we don't, I mean, it's not against the law for companies to have sales incentives. In many cases, that's a pretty standard way of compensating some salesmen. I mean, commissions are a form of compensation based on performance, right? So where would we or could we draw the line on sales incentives? If you're Mr. Baker, if you're the CEO of this stock company, do you feel good about giving trips out to your salesmen for selling stock?
I mean, you get to the point of where, let's say, making Jeff Bezos type of money, and I mean, if I'm giving my employees a trip to Hawaii to enjoy time with their family, am I really doing the wrong thing?
Bezos money we can't even comprehend that, right? Ms. Jordan?
Yeah, I think some incentives, like, are excessive. Cause I used to, like, work at Geico, I used to sell roadside, like, add-ons. And we would have, like, add-ons that really weren't good. And, like, but we would have to still sell those. And so they would just do, like, kind of not like outrageous incentives, but incentives that it's like, like if you get it, it's good, but what you're selling isn't. So like maybe like just like a regular normal incentive, like I don't know, maybe like PTO leave early, but sometimes it used to be like, if you didn't have PTO for the week, you could still be gone for the whole week, you just had to sell.
So you might want to do an incentive that you feel is more reasonable, and that would motivate your employees, but wouldn't cause them to maybe cross lines. And
speaking in like an aspect like with sales like that, like because you don't want to you still have to sell, but you still don't want to sell nothing that's like messed up, because even if they return it, you still don't get the sale, like they take it back, so it's like it was pointless.
Gotcha. Mr. Lester?
Yeah, I know one thing, that my boss did when I worked at State Farm, is he kind of left it up to the office. And so like, our whole thing with life insurance, so as an office, you have to sell this much life insurance stuff a year. And if I hit your goals, then he'll get a big bonus, and then everyone just decide. So like, everybody decided to take a trip, but because everyone got to decide what we wanted our incentive to be, there was a motivation to kind of hit our numbers and it worked. So.
And isn't it going to hit each person differently? What motivates us? And doesn't it hit us differently where we are in the process? I mean, if I'm one car short of that trip to Hawaii, I'm fixing to sell the hell out of that last car, right? I mean, how far am I willing to push my own ethics to get that trip? Ms. Daniels?
But you have to think about in every job perspective. It's just like Publix and Walmart. You will probably go to Walmart before you go to Publix, because you know that Publix is gonna overprice all of their products on the shelf. So that's with any job that you do, you're gonna standards that you have to apply to that you don't really agree to, but it's like, you still have to do your job.
No job is perfect.
No job is
Right.
perfect. That's what I'm trying to get at, because it's just like, you can't just say it's about one job and do a whole other thing and a whole other job.
Right, so it's easy for us to talk about general things, right? But when it gets placed in the specific context of a specific job, then it becomes a little more difficult. And again, so another thing it depends on is the specific job you're doing. George.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having outlandish incentives from the company's perspective. You could have the most ridiculous incentives ever to do something really basic. I don't think that in and of itself is wrong. What your employees choose to do is up to them, and if they choose to do something wrong because they desire that incentive so much, that's not necessarily your fault. That's a choice on their own part. But I think the problem would be is when you're incentivizing them to do something that in and of itself is wrong. Like it would fit the same criteria as earlier if it were something that harms someone.
Gotcha. So we draw the line on incentives where if the incentive is to do your job, to sell the product, that's okay. If your incentive is would encourage people to do something illegal or cut corners or lie, then you maybe have a problem. But the idea of incentives just in and of itself is okay. I think that's why incentives are not illegal, right? I think that's why we have them. They work. Ms. Reynolds.
Also in the bad way, like isn't that what happened in the Wells Fargo, like that whole scandal?
Yes.
Like, cutting corners.
That did happen in the Wells Fargo scandal. They were incentivizing the customer service representatives to open up. They were incentivizing them based on number of accounts open. So they were going in and opening up accounts for their customers that the customers didn't know about. And they weren't, it was harmless in the sense that it wasn't necessarily costing the customers anything, but the salespeople were racking up bonuses because they were ticking off the numbers. Yeah, they got in big trouble for that. Did I skip you, Shelby? Okay. One last question before we move on to the next one, because we'll never fit. At this point, we're going to get through this one and no other ones. As a consumer, does it bother you that the salesperson you're dealing with has an incentive?
No.
Because why? You expect that?
Yeah, I think it's not my business. Like, if I'm in marketing something, I don't care what you get from it. Like, this is what I need cars for things.
So in other words, a consumer, that's not something a consumer needs to know necessarily. It's just, you should expect that might be, that your salesperson might be, you probably should expect that your salesperson is being incentivized for sales, right? All right, that was great. Let's move on to the next one. You're selling consumer electronics, TVs, DVDs, CD players. You look in the paper this morning before going to work and you notice that your competitor down the street is offering the same brand and model of TV, but for $100 less than your store. Later in the day, a customer comes in asking to buy that particular TV. You sell the customer the set without mentioning she could buy it for $100 less at your competitors. Does anybody see a problem with that? Nobody.
I mean, I do because, just like I was at Lowe's, if you come to Lowe's and you pick up something, if you see it on Home Depot website, you gonna put it up. I want it for this price. If you can't give it to me for this price, I don't want it.
Well, what if the consumer doesn't know that it's cheaper somewhere else?
We can return it. We can return it.
All right, other Ms. Daniels.
That goes to me saying about Walmart and Target. You go at IKEA, TV is, I'm talking about high. But you probably get that same TV at Walmart for $500. At IKEA, you're gonna get it for about $1,000, $1,500.
Well, as consumers, it is almost a rule for consumers, right? That you know that the price of a product is not the same at every store, right? I mean, that would be fair. Shelby.
Well, it goes back to doing your research.
Goes back to doing your research.
If you're gonna spend $500 on TV, you better be making sure you're getting the best deal possible. I mean.
That's the truth. That's the truth when it comes to TV.
Like, you can wait till your big deals go out and then decide too. I mean, you don't have to buy it like instantly. Like you save your money.
Mr. Lester,
If anything, I would definitely tell like my manager or something like that, so they'll know like, hey.
tell your manager that. Yeah.
I'll shoot something for it.
Grayson.
But it goes back to like doing research and stuff like that, but it's your job to sell a TV, give good customer service. It's not your job to tell people like, you can go down the street.
That's right. We would not, if you were the owner of the company, would we want our salespeople telling people to go buy it cheaper down the street? Heck no. Dalton.
I've worked at Marco's for the past 2 years, and so Marco's is one of the more expensive pizza places, and so we were told for specials, you could get a pizza $10 cheaper almost, like if you order a big order, it could go from $30 to $20 if you put in the specials. And we were told, even if they order it, they don't ask for the specials, don't bring up the special. Even if you can sit there and see that you can easily put in the
All right, when you
specials.
started that answer, that was going to be my next question on it, but I'm going to come back to that for a second. Go ahead.
And that goes to show, if I really didn't like my company like that, I probably would say, you could get this TV down the street.
If you don't like how you're being treated, you might send you might punish your company by doing that.
I did it before though.
So interesting you say that. We ordered Marco's this past weekend. And we don't usually order Marco's, and we're like, let's order something different. And I noticed on the Marco's app that there are not as many coupons, or there are not as many things that you can, like Domino's, you have to scroll through 100 specials, figure out if you fit in. But I didn't see that on Marco's. So how do y'all feel about, do you expect the pizza place to tell you if what you've ordered fits in a special, or it could be combined in a way that would save you money?
I think it's cool if they do, but at the same time, like you said, everybody knows Marvin's is more expensive. You want to save money, Little Caesars.
So it's cool if they do, but you don't feel wronged if they don't.
If you don't know,
But I mean, that's just like McDonald's. Look, McDonald's, you get a $3 bundle. When you might go a chicken sandwich and a medium fry, it automatically come up as a $3 bundle. So my thing is, it's about, I don't know, because Marco's is a higher pizza place. As for McDonald's, it's kind of cheap, on the cheaper end.
Yeah,
So
but
you basically eat what you pay for.
do you would you make your buying choices based on things like, I like the fact that I know when I put it in the kiosk, it's going to find me the best deal?
Mm-hmm.
So that might be, McDonald's might be making less money by giving the customers the deals they don't know they could get, but they might be making that up on the other end with loyalty or satisfaction. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Harrell.
I think it goes back to customer service too, because like she was saying, I'll go to Walmart before I go to Publix because it's cheaper, but I have customers that come to Publix just so they don't have to go to Walmart because of the customer service. So if you actually legit do shop at Publix, there's a lot of deals all the time. Not just saying it's my company, but like you go there for customer service, like you're gonna get the best products out there, but you expect, like when you go to Walmart, that you're gonna go up to someone and be like, I don't know, it's over there. Like you expect certain standards at certain places, so you're gonna pay for those.
I think that's true as consumers. We do have certain expectations about that price and service sometimes go hand in hand, lower price, lower service. Dalton?
Back, going off what she said, I can tell you from experience of every person, every employee in the store, it goes off the consumer and how they answer the phone. So if you get a rude customer, you're not gonna sell them any special thing.
So your customers or customers that treat you nice, you're much more willing to give them the deal. Ms. Jordan?
Yeah, I hear that, cause like at Ulta, like, they have like, because we price match like with our app, and like, you may find like that same one online cheaper than what you do in the store, but, I mean, if I know it, like, depending on the customer, sometimes I'll tell them, or like, how much they spend, if they spend a lot, I'll be like, I'll still tell them if they're not, it just depends, like, if they
well, in our Marco's example, or in your example, does it does the calculation in your mind change whether you are an hourly employee or whether you're the owner of the business? I mean, if you own a mom and pop, if you own your own pizza store, Dalton, and you're the one ringing it up, and you could save the customer money by telling them about a special, does that change your, I mean, this is your money.
I can tell you my uncle's the owner.
Your uncle's the owner,
So
okay?
I can give you his perspective.
Yeah, let's hear his perspective.
So he's told me that, like I was saying, if they don't ask for it, then in his perspective, it's, they didn't ask for it, they're looking to just buy what you sell. But if they do ask for it, he wants you to give them the best deal and give them the best customer service to regain their,
So what's the lesson? Always ask, is this the best deal you can give me?
But his-
Right? Yes.
I would say his main perspective is try and get a return customer. He wants as many sales as
Right, return customers are much more important. You know, if I left Marco's and found out that I could have gotten my order for $10 or $12 cheaper, I'd be mad at myself, but I'd also be a little bit ticked off that, like, I mean, this whole process needs to be a little bit more customer friendly here. I mean, you know, that's a lot of money. Does anybody feel like Mr. Corcoran has a duty to tell people that what they're ordering fits into a special? Yes, ma'am.
I personally wouldn't say he don't. Like, you really don't have to tell if they have a special or anything, like, that would be nice for him to do that, you know. But at the end of the day, you still have a job to uphold, like, whether you like it or not, because from a manager point of view, from an owner point of view, and from an employee point of view, it's all gonna be different. Because you gotta understand that they have to make their sales, and they have to make that money, because, you know what I'm saying, the owner, you gotta, like, and then you're gonna go to whatever place you feel that have the best pizza. I know I'm not the type to just, I'm gonna get $5 pizza because it's $5. I'm gonna go get what I'm gonna eat.
Well, I mean, at your house, because at our house, we get the $5 pizza because it's $5. Yeah.
Well, I think also, it also comes down to your intentions, right? So like how he said, like his uncle, he said, we can get a loyal customer, like a regain a customer, then we will. I think it's like, it's cheaper to, it's like cheaper to have a repeated, or keep a customer than it is to get new ones. So I think if your whole premise is, yeah, customer service, we want to make sure that we're getting, you know, repeated customers, yeah.
So to go back to my theme from the beginning, in this scenario, it depends. Depends on whether you're the owner, whether you're just an employee. It depends on what your goal is. Is it to make this sale, or is it to make to encourage a customer to become a repeat customer and make a whole bunch of future sales? It depends. I would say it depends on the price. If I could save the customer a couple bucks, or if I could save the customer $200, I mean, that might be a motivating factor too. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get a return customer if I can save them more money. The more money, the more loyal they might be, but that's also the less money I'm making my company. So it just depends. What about, I'm gonna ask Mr. Lester this question. If you're the salesman and your best friend's grandmother comes in, little old lady, you've known her forever, and she comes in and tells you, Stevan, I'm on a fixed income. You know, I don't have very much money, and I need my TV gave out, and I cannot watch my stories, and I just can't afford to pay a penny more than, you know, but this is the TV I want. Are you gonna be like, hey, Grandma, head on down the street, you can get this for $100 cheaper?
I think first, I would do everything I can to like try to get the price down as much as possible. But yeah, if I can't get it to where we can beat them, like
respond.
So it might depend on the person.
Yeah.
You might feel, so are you violating any duty to your company when you do that?
No.
How do you feel company owners about your employees telling their friends or little old ladies, hey, you can go on down the street and buy this cheaper? Ms. Daniels.
Cause I mean, at the end of the day, you still have morals too. So if I saw a little old lady in my store and she picked up a TV for $500, she just explained to me, you know, I'm not going through something, you know, I don't have this much money to pay for this TV. But baby, you might wanna go down there too. Well, stop. That TV is less than, you get what I'm saying? Because I'm not finna, like I said, you have morals. So at the end of the day, would you feel comfortable with yourself selling that TV, knowing that that's somebody that was, you know?
So Ms. Daniels makes a point that I want everybody to take away from this. At the end of the day, you have to look in the mirror, and only you are looking in the mirror. Now, I would argue you do have a duty to your employee. You do owe a duty of loyalty to your employer. You do. And it's not, I mean, you're technically violating that duty, but we all have, as Ms. Daniels said, morals. And so where that line is drawn for each of us is different. And there are white lies that are harmless. There are lies that might actually help somebody. There are personal morals. And so when we say it depends on a whole host of factors. And I think y'all laid them out very well today. We still got a little time. Ms. Burrows.
I was just gonna say, like, I think in the long run, that employee, if they were to tell the old lady, like, hey, get over here, like, that would make her trust that place more, and she would, like, come back there in the future.
So that there might be you might be doing your employer a favor in the long run. Possible. Ms. Harrell?
I think a lot of it depends on like who you are, cause like my loyal customers, like I'll tell them legit how it is. Like, I'm like, go over here, whatever, like, and like deals that, cause we get the sales ads early, be like, just wait a day or two, it's about to go on sale, like, but if you come in there and you're screaming at me and yelling at me, I'm not gonna tell you nothing, like, you can do what you want. But I think it all goes back to customer service, like, if you wanna be treated correctly, you're gonna treat someone else correct. I mean, you can't just go in there demanding respect because you work there. People aren't gonna wanna help you anymore.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, Mr. Thomas.
The way I also see it as well is that I feel like a way to sort of get in the middle of that is that you don't exactly have to tell her to go to the store down the street, but you could also suggest to her to do her research as well. Because not only could she find that TV somewhere else, but she could also find another TV at the business where you're at that may be cheaper that could fit her needs as well.
Is anybody, Ms. Jordan?
I think it depends on what type of customer service you're in, because I don't feel like in insurance and retail, like in retail, like, you know, I'm gonna be honest and like, you know, tell you to go down the street or whatever like that, because like, they'll more likely become a return customer, and return customers usually spend more money than like a one-time person. But like, if you like on the other side of customer service, like maybe you have to like sell and meet a quota, and what I had to do in insurance, I honestly didn't care. If I had to meet my quota, and I know that plan was, and I know that, roadside add-on was bad, I don't care, I would still sell it. If you buy it, then you buy it, but I'm gonna meet my quota, so it just depends on like what type of.
Depends on what you're selling, depends on what kind of customer service, what kind of industry it is. Interesting. Ms. Daniels.
But even with the customer service, I agree with, you saying if a customer have an attitude or, you know, just having a bad day or something like that. At the end of the day, we always been taught customers are always right. So no matter the attitude or anything like that, because at my job, I have a lot of customers that have a lot of nasty attitudes, but they turn out to be kind of loyal customers. You know, they actually, how can I put it? So, I got cussed out by a man. Like, I'm ringing him up on his stuff. Even though we had an altercation, I still have a job to do.
That man come in my store every day now. Even though we had an altercation, that still can lead to a loyal customer. I still wouldn't trade telling him the deals that we have. Just like Home Depot, they don't offer military discount on a lot of things. But Lowe's, we offer military discount on everything except for markdown prices. I'm gonna tell you, at my job, we're not supposed to, we're not supposed to, like, they want you to not mention most of this stuff because it is a product, like, they do have to make their profit or whatever, but at the end of the day, like I said, I have morals and values. I would want somebody to do the same for me as I'm doing for them.
So we got a good Lowe's commercial and a good Publix commercial today, right? Like it? Yes, sir.
But I also think like once they kind of pipe down and like they calm down and they kind of reflect on the situation, that kind of helps your benefit. Because then they'll be like, well, dang, maybe I was like doing a little bit of the most, but that person still kind of helped me out, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just don't take it personal, because honestly, they're not really mad at you.
That's true, but it's hard not to take it personal sometimes. I know that's true. I know that's true. All right, let's do one more. And I'm going to read it to you. Your boss tells you that it's not been a very good year economically, so there won't be a raise this year. But she does not want the other employees to know yet, so she tells you, if anyone asks if we're getting a raise this year, just say you don't know. Later, one of your coworkers asks if you've heard if there will be a raise this year. You do as your boss asks. Was that a lie? You told your coworker, I don't know, but you know.
That was a good lie. Do you get a which I my business?
Well, Stevan says it's a good lie, so in what way?
Like if I was in that situation and I know, I'd be like, yeah, that's not my business. We just have to find out, like, because I feel like if you were to start that rumor and tempers flare or whatever, there's a problem in the office and it's gets up to corporate or whatever, they're like, where'd you get that from? Well, Stevan said, nah, you're in trouble, especially because it told you not to say anything. So I'd rather just say, yeah, I don't know what you have to
Well,
say.
and if we're gonna, let's lawyer this up. What was the question was,
If you're that,
the question was, have you heard if there will be a raise this year?
But it's not really a wrong though, because your boss told you that you only get no money.
But she told you not to tell anybody
Like,
else.
yeah, if you working together, you ask me, I'm like, I don't know, it ain't my business for real, and I'm keep going. Even though I do know, I can tell you because I don't think you mad.
Grayson.
Yeah.
It's kind of like your place to tell, you know what I mean? 'Cause like in my job, I have a lot of back information that I know on a daily basis, but it's not my place to tell, you know what I mean? It's my boss's place.
So how would you answer that question?
I would say at the moment, there's no other word about it, but give us some time to figure out the details and we will provide information following.
All right, good answer. Yes, ma'am. Well, one of the Daniels.
but at the same time, that's just like in the work, like, you're not supposed to tell nobody how much you get paid. So, if my boss come to me and say, this is a maybe, but don't tell nobody. I mean, that's word from my boss. So
Would-
if my boss tell me that, I can't say yes or no, because at the end of the day, I haven't done it yet. So I can't say that, I wouldn't say that it's a lot to, tell somebody that, no, we're not, because at the end of the day, I was told not to say anything.
Other Daniels.
I probably would say, I don't know, just try to keep down chaos and confusion, because when stuff usually get out in the business, everybody seems to bum rush all the managers or the head person. So it was very important that the manager did say, do not tell anybody, because you're trying to keep down drama and chaos.
So I tell him,
Miss Jordan.
I do say, I feel like it depends on like who asks. I mean, like you always got like that one person at work that you just like.
There's always that
Yeah,
one
so
person.
it's like if they ask you, I don't be like, no, they ain't getting no bonus. But like somebody asks me, I'll be like, I don't really know, but like it just depends on who asks. Like
Depends on who's asking.
yeah, it depends on who asks.
What if it's your sister at? What if y'all both work at Lowe's and you know and she doesn't? She's like, hey, sis.
they're my best friend.
So it depends, right, on whether the person asking is your twin. Okay, good. Ms. Harrell.
I think it changed work ethic. they gave us a 60-cent raise instead of getting our inventory bonus every quarter, and it changes work ethic. Like, a lot of us don't care because they only gave the inventory bonuses to the managers, so assistant manager, grocery manager, store manager, like those are the only people that get inventory bonuses. So a lot of us don't care anymore, like, you bring back a cake that's half eaten, sure, I'll give you your money back, like, it's not,
I see.
so work ethic changes a lot too.
So yeah, it could depend on what you're incentivized to do. Well, let me ask you this. I haven't heard anybody say that if the question was, have you heard whether we're getting a raise or not? Couldn't you say, yeah, I have, but I can't tell you? Does that offend you? Like what? So what's wrong? Does anybody feel bad about saying that, Mr. Thomas?
The way I see it is that if you can't say it at all, then I'm gonna personally think that we're not. I'm just gonna automatically assume the negative in the situation. So that's why I feel like just not saying anything at all is the best option, so people don't assume. Because when people assume, then it can lead to like.
So you foresee problems more making things worse by saying I know but I can't tell you.
Yes.
But isn't I know but I can't tell you the truth? And isn't I don't know a lie? So what's the so help me understand, and I'm doing this for purpose of discussion, not because I disagree with you, but what's wrong with the answer I do know but I was told not to tell?
Like sometimes like how a lie can be bad. Sometimes the truth can be bad. Like you don't wanna say it and then they be like, well dang, why you can't tell me? And you know, it be like tension, animosity, and they go around and be like, well she knows something, she ain't telling it.
Well, who's mad at the boss for putting that on you? I would be, right? Couldn't you also answer the question, training my future lawyers, couldn't you also answer the question without answering it? Couldn't you say something like, you're gonna have to ask the boss? You didn't lie. You just never answered the question. Now I'm teaching y'all, this is I'm teaching y'all how to get around stuff. That's not good. Any more thoughts before we break up for today? Mr. Williams.
You just say yes.
You could just say yes.
No, because
Well, there's going to be a follow-up question, right? Maybe not, yeah?
Just flat out saying yes.
Oh, so the word yes may be misleading in and of itself. I think I would try to answer the question without answering the question and without lying, maybe, if I could figure out a way to do that. But, Ms. Kelly.
So, the person that the manager told, are they like a manager, an assistant manager, or are they just a random employee that they told?
So that depends, right? It depends. Is it another manager or is it somebody that,
Supervisor or something, like, why are
Yeah.
you telling that person?
yeah. What if it depended on, maybe the employee wasn't supposed to overhear the conversation and they did, and then the boss was like, ooh, well, you can't, if anybody asks, don't tell anybody. Plead the fifth. All right, well, thank y'all for your participation today. That was excellent. That's always one of my most favorite classes of the year. I will tell you, we will have some more good discussion, but this probably gets a little bit more boring. Next week, we're going to start the study of tort law. So be ready to do that. We're going to spend 2 weeks on that starting next Tuesday. But please don't wait till next Monday night to do your assignments for this week. Y'all have a good weekend. If you came